Hi, everyone. Welcome to Blank Space. Blank Space is a channel that I created to highlight stranger stories. That could be just about anyone that you see in your life on a day-to-day basis. It could be the stranger on the park bench next to you. It could be your local coffee shop owner that you haven't quite made it past small talk with. It could be the cute guy that you saw dancing at the bar last night. The point is that this is a space, a blank space, for just about anyone to come on and share their funny story, share their life story, cool experiences, hot takes, whatever it may be. So without further ado, I'll introduce my next guest, which is Lucas. Lucas is a yoga teacher in the Presidio in San Francisco, and I will let him tell the rest of his story.
I feel like this could be a very deep question. What do I consider home? But in this context of Presidio, I mean, I live here, like it's home. When I say I want to go home, it's home. Um, but something that's really interesting is that, it's federal land, so no one here owns property.
Mm-hmm.
So no one owns their own home. Like
Right.
literally, everyone's renting property from. There's something called the Presidio Trust, and everyone pays the Presidio Trust to rent out space here. So technically, no one owns anything here.
Right.
So as far as a definition of home goes, for me, yeah, it's been home for like the past almost 3 years, and I hope for that to continue. But I think home is wherever we find home.
Well, okay, so it sounds like this isn't home, maybe. I know maybe it is a deep question. For some people, it's not. Sometimes they're like, yes, we're sitting in our home, but where is your home? Where's home and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did always feel like it was going to be here. And then some years ago, when I moved back to the Bay, my parents decided to move. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind is family. I don't have any immediate family members here in the city. That was different years ago. So now it's just me, and that's been very hard. So that's one. I always think about family, and we're all spread out across the U.S. and the world. Two is somewhere where my soul, my spirit can feel at home. And I think that's kind of what Presidio does for me at the moment. It lets me feel very open. I have access to nature while still being in the city. I can walk to my yoga studio that I teach at and practice at. I can walk down the Chestnut Street. I can do all these things. So I guess less about the access, but just a little bit more about where I can feel very present and in the context of home in the Presidio, it does that.
Gotcha. And you said your family's not here, but you grew up here, and you said they're all over the world. So where is your family?
My immediate family. I have a brother and a sister. Sister, she's down in LA with her husband. Recently married as of last year. My brother, he's in Boston with his partner. And then my parents, they're in Nevada.
Nevada, okay.
That's where they decided to settle down and retire. And from there, that's their home base, and they go travel the world. Yeah. Gotcha. The rest of my family, they are in Asia, they're in Europe, they're in England, they're in France, they're in Hong Kong, they're in Malaysia, a whole bunch of places.
Yeah, so this is something that I didn't know until we were talking, is that you weren't a U.S. citizen until 2016.
Yeah.
So you said that your family settled in Nevada, but you weren't born here.
I was not.
And it sounds like your family all over. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about what made the move from Hong Kong to the U.S.?
Opportunity. On the literal level, my father found an amazing job and decided that it was the best decision to move family to America. California landed upon values and systems such as a better future for our kids, next generation. We want the best schooling for our kids. So that's really where my parents were coming from. That's it. I think I could go through the whole story of like my parents, but essentially it breaks down to that. They wanted a really great future for me and my siblings. They wanted to get away from the pollution as well in Hong Kong. That was a huge thing for specifically my sister. So a huge life improvement overall in all aspects. That's really it.
Gotcha. How old were you when they made that move?
I was 1 year old.
1 year old. Okay.
Yes.
So you don't really remember life before the US?
No, not that first part, but at least I'd say the years between then and when we really settled here, there was a lot of movement around. We actually first moved to Vancouver. That's where my grandparents were. Yeah. And we would travel along there. We once moved down to San Diego. So there was a lot of like little movements here and there, and obviously going back to Hong Kong several times. So as much as, I was a year old, and I'll tell people that I was 1 year old when I moved away from Hong Kong. So people are like, "Oh, you're basically American or whatever." It's like, okay, you don't get it. You're still missing it. It's not either one or the other. It's like, just because I was born somewhere else does not mean like I'm not like America or don't belong here. But just because I only became an American citizen in 2016 does not mean
Yeah. Wait, okay, can you explain a little bit more about that? Because like that's a lot of movement within the US, and plus like, I mean, your parents were not American citizens when they came. Like, what was that like?
It's interesting. I have friends that are also immigrants and have probably had way more movement than I did as a kid. So I'm definitely grateful for having the opportunity to be grounded in one place. I could have moved to 10 different places during my education, and I'm glad that didn't happen. So that being said, I still had a very grounding childhood. Like I grew up on very, very like European and Asian values, culture as well. Very different from many other households as I was growing up. So how would I describe that? It's different. I wouldn't say I struggled. It was just starkly different when I would see, feel, hear how others would act in public, or specifically in schools. Like I was specifically told certain things. Hey, respect is a big thing in our culture. So from a very young age, it was taught and ingrained in my soul on how to interact with others, specifically with the elderly. So we start off with our families, right? In the Asian cultures, it's generally a theme, and also in some European cultures. I hope all of them, but I don't know that for sure. So the respect to the elderly is kind of where like the big theme starts from. We respect our elders, we respect our parents, doing our best to, at least before we get to our teenage years. So from that central value, it kind of goes outward. It goes outward to figures, people that we look up to, teachers, coaches, like the people that are trying to give us an opportunity in life. And that's where I think there was definitely like differences in opinions and like cultures. Because when I was going through the school system, American school system, a very type A environment, at least the schools that I went to, my report cards would always come back as Lucas is too shy. He doesn't participate enough. And then I think my parents would always have to go in for additional parent-teacher conferences because my teachers always thought that, oh, this kid, he's different. He doesn't talk as much as the other kids. It's a little strange. So that's an example of how there's like differences. Feels very minute, but as I was growing up, it was like, there's something wrong with me? Is there something that's like, I don't feel like I had to speak up at this time. I think I'd had to answer that 8 times 8 is 64, but the other kid got it wrong. So I'm still going to give others the opportunity to correct themselves. And when I do get called upon, then sure, in classrooms, I'll answer. But there's several things I can talk about there in terms of like values and experiences. But
there's a lot.
There's a lot you can talk about there. It's
Well, I'm curious more. Like that's interesting to hear that example. Like your parents like getting pulled into class, like about not speaking up. So from your point of view, is that like I respect my teachers, and it's almost, there was a saying that I heard when I was a kid that children do not speak unless spoken to, which is a more aggressive way to say stay quiet.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But was that sort of like your understanding of saying, I'm respecting you, and if you want me to provide something for you, I will answer, or was it something else?
A little bit. Yeah. That's one way to say it. Like, I'm not going to speak out of turn. And that's a big part of at least the culture I was from. Like, I don't speak over my parents. I don't speak over someone else when they're talking. It doesn't have to be parents, it's just someone else who's talking. It's just a general rule of thumb. And so in the American school system, it's different. Obviously, there's the first structure, like raise your hand if you want to be called on, and that's the respectful way. But not every single classroom, teacher, environment's like that. So there would be times I would notice it was very contradictory, because there would be classes and teachers that would encourage and set up that structure where you raise your hand to be called upon. And then there would be several times after where that rule was broken. It was like, that didn't matter. And the first person who spoke up to answer the question that the teacher posed would then get praised. So there's this whole other dynamic that as a kid, I was just kind of like, what the hell? Like, you set up like this expectation, and then I'm like, I'm following it, but then you're going to praise somebody who's falling out of that like container. So I think if I kind of had to describe that in like a Western way and a modern way, where you look at any sort of context, like you're going to set up the container for someone to do work or to grow or whatever that is. That can be a yoga class, that can be a coach and their running student, or like literally anything. When you set up like a structure or a container for something, and then when you break that structure, it's fine to break it for a reason or for purpose, for the growth of a student. But when it's like when it's a whole classroom, it's got to be a collective learning. So I think for me, I always felt like there was more to it than just like one-to-one learning. So I think a lot of the times in the school system, there was a lot of like one-on-one interactions, when really like I was taking it as like, we're all in the classroom, so we're all in it together. Individualism in America.
It really is. It is that. So I don't know if I told you this, but I was homeschooled. And so I didn't go to my first school until I was in high school. And I remember being like,
I did not know this.
Yeah. So formal education was almost like an eye opener of being like, okay, when do you speak up? When do you, like, you've got to figure out what the teachers want. And it's almost a game to like play, but you also have to prove that like you're almost competing in the classroom, which is odd in an education system. So in that sense, I know what you're talking about, of like kind of trying to figure out a schooling system of being like, what is this? Obviously in a very different way.
Yeah.
But so did that impact your friendships with other kids in the classroom? Or
I had great friends growing up. I definitely got along with the kids that weren't from America very well. Along my childhood journey, there were kids that would come in the first grade, leave the third grade, come in the third grade, be there like for however long, like, in and out. So like I was aware of like, there's some, families go through other things. And so the thing about my upbringing that I think was advantageous to like the American lifestyle is that I saw and felt and learned things that were very real early on. And so I didn't necessarily pass judgment on kids that were in different situations. So that allowed for me to make really great friendships. But at the same time, dynamically, that would be difficult, because in the school system, there's certainly, perspectives on who you make friends with. But I didn't necessarily have any power trip over that.
Yeah.
So I think when others would look at me weird when I would be friends with like the weird kids, I was talking to this guy or this girl, like I just like I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy connection and growth. So for me, I branched out in every way I could. And unfortunately, I can recall in several like friendships that like filtered out not because of me, but because I think the other person just felt like it was wrong for them to be a friend with me, or wrong for them to develop like a relationship where there's a lot of pressure from peers, teachers, or parents, and then they're going to go leave and go to another city. So that was always hard for me. And I think eventually when I started to lose friends going into high school, when we all went our different directions, that was hard. Um, that's when I was like, well, shit, now I'm all by myself. And that's when I went to freshman year in high school. And then I really started to focus on academics, my sports, and like performance. Um, that was hard.
Gotcha. Wait, can you keep? I said gotcha. I don't really gotcha. Can you describe that a little bit more? You said like your friends felt weird about being friends with you because the pressure your surroundings.
I don't actually know that. That's just an instinct that I grabbed from when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old with a whole bunch of other kids that, we were kind of all in the same boat. But I just, upon reflection and remembering how certain interactions were or how we operate as kids, there's so much pressure on us as kids. I think I was always encouraged to like, oh, be strong, Lucas, like, whatever. So that's my own story. But I didn't necessarily feel like I had to give into pressure, if that makes sense. Like if some other kid was really like being annoying, I would tell them to shut up. Like, shut up, I'm trying to fucking learn here. So in a way, I think maybe me growing up sort of had the reputation for just not like not giving a fuck, like not in a bad way, but just again, like, dude, like, I'm not going to BS.
You did your own thing and you like yourself and you didn't care. Where at that age, like it's like a lot of people do, especially as you go into like middle school, like a lot of people start like playing games and stuff about like who they like.
And I think that threw me off a little bit when I started to lose friends and they went different directions. Not necessarily because it was a bad thing, but people choose their own ways. So I think that was kind of like the mark from my childhood going forward of like, everyone's choosing their own path and I'm going to choose this way.
So then you go to high school and you start throwing yourself into performance.
Yes.
Which, your words, not mine.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Oh man. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is actually before I even hit high school. My mother, she's very hard on me. She's very disciplined. She also had a huge passion for tennis, the sport. So she naturally got me into it. And I also remember like she would bring me to the tennis courts as a kid. She'd be serving balls. She'd want to get better. And then I didn't know what it was, but I'd go play around and sometimes hit a tennis racket with her. So growing up, she found that I really loved physical things. I loved to run. I loved to play soccer. I loved to like whatever. So I learned how to play tennis. Coming up to the 8th grade, I got good enough that I was being scouted by colleges at the age of whatever 8th grade was, 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds.
Yep.
So when I first saw a letter come in and we had to like reach out and be like, dude, like this kid's too young, like, come back later, but it only continued. That was a lot of pressure. It was weird because it was like I didn't necessarily care. I knew what those letters were, but I remember my mom opening it and it meant more to my mom than me. And that was kind of like a feeling or something. I was just like, I didn't understand it, but I was just kind of like, it seems off. I'm just trying to enjoy this. So yeah, I headed straight into like sports mode in high school and academic mode. I did well.
You mentioned that you were going to a lot of like competitive schools, just like in general, and there's like a lot of pressure. And then your mom saying that she's opening that mail and it means more to her. I'm assuming what you mean is like she's insanely proud, but also really wants you to like go to one of these schools.
Yeah.
Is that like how did that feel, like that type of pressure, but also knowing it's a sense of pride in her child?
Well, as a kid, I couldn't really break that apart, and I think that was it. To me, it was just kind of like I'm just enjoying this thing, and I love to find the groove every single time I was playing the sport. I could always hit a ball in a certain location, like very hard, in any single spin that I wanted to. And it was upon that point where I had so much pressure on me to perform. I remember, oh my God, so like The other example I can give is like I walked onto the varsity team freshman year, and we were playing in a finals league match, and this is high school, so it's like in reflection, it didn't matter. But like in the moment, as like a freshman on the varsity team, the only freshman on the varsity team playing doubles, the very last match that was being played against our rivals in the final game of they call it MCAL leagues, which is like the league game. Uh, us winning would have meant we would have won the entire thing. And I ended up losing. I was upset. I was crying my eyes out because I was first of all heartbroken the way that it happened. The other team decided to just call bad line calls after bad line calls. So like I knew like every single shot I was hitting was like this is how I practiced over the years. And so for the other team to be like, calling bad line calls and essentially cheat was one thing, but the other thing was like I could feel in my bones. Like I knew that every single time I'd hit a ball a certain way, it would fall into a certain place, and everyone would see it was horrendously bad line calls. So externally, people saw it, but internally, it was like the amount of work that I put in to make that happen wasn't allowed to happen. That broke my heart. From that moment forward, I kept winning games and whatever, and won more leagues for high school or whatever. But I think that point is like when I finally got to a point where that was happening so much, not just bad line calls, but externally, like we're talking about my mother really putting a lot of pressure on me. I had lost the passion for the sport. I was like, it became a part of the sport for me. That was my understanding back then. It's like, well, this is a part of the game. I don't want it anymore. I'm out. Mm-hmm. So I quit tennis. I started to play soccer more, and I played soccer in college. That's how that happened. I was a much better tennis player than I was a soccer player.
As someone who grew up playing sports too, I think it's a pretty heavy topic of conversation these days about parents and like the pressure they put on kids in sports, and also like the enjoyment you're supposed to get out of it. Like how much do you focus on one sport versus how much do you play like a bunch of different sports, and then how does it show up in like academics and stuff? So I think that a lot of people can relate to that sense of being like, I really enjoyed something. It's a game. It's literally a game that's supposed to bring joy, and then a certain amount of pressure that kind of took it away. But did you? What was your dad like? Was he involved in it or no?
So my father, he's British, so he really enjoyed me playing soccer, and he didn't say that to me growing up. He actually told me that recently, because he didn't really have that opportunity as a kid growing up. So he was happy to, see that I had that opportunity, and I think that's where he was coming from.
What do you think was the difference? Like, is your dad just like is he more laid back? Is your mom a little bit? It sounds like he's a little more laid back and she's more intense. Is that
my mom? I would describe her. She's got a lot of tiger energy, and on the Chinese calendar, she does fall under the year of the tiger. So there's a reason why I'm saying that. Mm-hmm. It's a very fierce, passionate, determined, disciplined, like straightforward. Doesn't BS around. My dad, he's very wise. He comes from a finance background, so he's also very strict in some ways, but in some ways he's not. So yeah, two different kinds of people, and that's me now.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have like a very. I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning, but your household seems very international. I mean, you lived in Vancouver, California, Hong Kong, like you have family all over. Your dad's British. Like, do you like feel more international than you do American, or do you feel like no, my entire upbringing? Because like it seems like you grew up in America, but your household was very international.
What's funny is the way that I want to answer that is like kind of no to both, and the reason why I say no to both is because I feel like I could go anywhere and make it my home. So bringing this conversation,
back to the home, yeah.
I've had the opportunity of traveling a lot as a kid, so that opened my eyes up early. I travel by myself. I do things by myself, and yeah, am I here in America now? Yeah, have I been here for a while? Yeah, but I feel that I've done enough of like kind of like, oh, I want to go travel the world kind of a thing. Like that was a long time ago for me. I don't necessarily feel like I have to go out and prove something like that. It's like I understand what's out there and what could be. There's things I'm not going to be able to experience that I haven't experienced yet. So a part of my yoga practice is also very connected to this. I feel I can connect with anyone. Um, I feel open enough to be able to do that. So when it comes to being like American or like international, it feels very like being shoved into a box. And so a lot of the times I won't introduce myself as like, oh, I'm not from here.
Mm.
Because as nowadays, as you know, it's kind of like, it can be kind of a sticky topic. I don't know for others. For me, it's not. So I'm generally open to it. If people pass judgment or like whatever on it, that's kind of on them. It's more of a reflection of who they are.
Totally.
So coming to your question, international versus being American, it's certainly a huge thing. Like no doubt, I've had so much conflict with reflecting, thinking about what that means to me, how I want to live forward. Sure, when I sign documents and I renew my passport and all those things like comes up literally. But when I really think about it, we're all humans at the end of the day, and when we put effort in, we'll see it come out the other end. If I'm going to be open with someone, will generally be open with me.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then I'm kind of like, oh, like yeah, that's fine. I chose to be open about it, and that's what matters. I think every single time I've gone on a trip, I don't think that's ever failed for me. I've always been able to uphold a broken 45-minute conversation in Spanish with someone because I don't speak it regularly, but I can do it. There was this one trip I took to Barcelona by myself in a hostel and speaking with this Argentinian guy for like 45 minutes. But he didn't know how to speak English, so there was zero choice. I didn't have any sort of choice. I was just like, "Puedo hablar un poquito español?" He like looked up at me. He was like, "Oh!" So we started to like speak back and forth for 45 minutes. I could hold off like a conversation like that, but I had to be open about the fact like, uh, "Señor, más despacio, por favor." I need a little bit more time for you to speak so I can understand.
Gotcha.
So
Right.
there's like, as long as I'm open, I feel like every single time I go out into the world, here, out there, things don't fail me. It's just kind of like a human experience.
Well, it's funny because it does seem it's also like what you are like as a child. Because you were saying that you just were yourself. If someone was being annoying, you said so. If someone was doing it, was just you just evolved and just like said things the way you said things, and then you evolved into a very competitive person, and then that like something a lot of people would give in to certain pressures or something, and you didn't. You said, no, this is what I want to do. But it for I know that you watched the other interview I had, which was talking about being authentic, and it sounds like it sounds as if you haven't had a problem with being authentic to yourself, and that can be conflicting in certain situations when people try and put you in a box, because like no one really belongs in a box. But would you say you have struggled to be authentic, or what? Like, how does that sound to like hear
Definitely.
that?
It's not easy. No, I think when like we all have desires as humans, we always have other things. We call them goals, achievements, whatever. Things we want to have happen in our lives. And when that's a thing, it becomes a little bit more difficult because, all right, so I'm running like a half marathon next week. So I'm going to put this in a very linear example for the sake of the example. If I want to run a certain time or get from point A to point B, well, there's quite literally 13.1 miles between me and the finish line. So like what happens in between that time?
Yeah.
But I'm curious enough to find out what it takes to go between point A and point B, where there's 13.1 miles. How do I run that the fastest? And what happens in between? So when I think about other things in life, like I think about career aspirations or relationships, obviously they're all different. But if I have an expectation for how something goes, I've got to figure out how I want to mitigate that gap, that 13.1 miles of gap in between start and finish. And I think that's where life is.
Yeah, that's a great example.
It's not easy to show up authentically for 13.1 miles or 26.2 if you're doing a full marathon. Much longer.
I want to get to that because I feel like there is something that's like very it's very SF of like, with that exact comment of just like, why aren't you running 26.2? It's like, because I have a life and I don't want to. That can be an answer. Okay, so you quit tennis, you started soccer, so obviously you couldn't give up the athletic pursuit. So tell me a little bit about going to RIT, right?
Yeah.
And then playing soccer. Thank you. Going there, playing soccer, coming back to California. Can you sort of like paint the picture about like how that journey kind of evolved?
Oh man.
I know it's a big question.
Well, I wanted to leave the Bay Area. Like, this is
why?
Bubble. It's a bubble.
Oh, bubble. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, growing up here, oh my gosh, like, it's great. It's very privileged and a lot of opportunity. I mean, not everyone is privileged, but I understood that to be my case more than others. So I'm like, I want to see what America's like. I've traveled to see the world, but I want to see what America's like. So I applied to East Coast schools. I got into RIT, and on paper, it did a lot of things for me. It had D3 soccer. It had an amazing electrical engineering program. It had this multi-million-dollar microfab room that most colleges don't have. It has a co-op program, a 5-year program where they require you to go work for companies before you can graduate. And then it was on the East Coast. So those 5 things did it for me.
What did you think of the East Coast? You got over there. What did you think?
I loved it. Very different culture, very different people. You're from there, so you know.
But I want to hear it from a Bay Area perspective.
I do miss it. If I could switch the populations of people to the West Coast, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Wow.
But I think the geography and weather changes people, and it inherently changes people's decisions. So it wouldn't really do anything in the long run. People would just normalize to what the situation is out here. Yeah. So really what I'm trying to describe is the people out on the East Coast are very, very, from my experience, I don't know about others, are down to earth. Very, like, they're not going to BS you, typically. And if they do, it's pretty dang obvious. Working with a lot of peers and my friends, I wouldn't want to say they're all straight shots, but for the most part, they have some idea what they want to do. That could also be the school that I went to. I went to a tech school. You got to know what you want to be doing in tech school, I think. But yeah, that's one thing. I feel that everyone kind of had some sort of clarity on their direction in life. It didn't even have to be career. It could have been their relationship. It could have been something. But there was one thing that they felt clear on. Not to say that people out here don't.
Well, I was going to say, I think all the people who don't have clarity on the East Coast move to California. So
so there's a trend. Okay, so we can kind of talk about this. Yeah. Out here, though, comparatively on that topic, I do feel that there is not a lot of clarity with the population here. But what does that open up for others here? It opens people up to experience different things that they wouldn't experience otherwise. So it kind of goes both ways. It's balancing 2 parts of the scale. The other ones, obviously, the weather, like effect, winter, fall. I mean, I love snow. I ski. So when people were like, you don't not like snow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I see, like, holiday times and, like, skiing, a very romantic vision of snow. And people are like, but you gotta, like, scrape off your, like, windshield and, like, you have to shovel. Like, try to say that to my parents. I'm like, I'll say it to anyone. I don't freaking care. Like, that's your perspective of snow. I'll be having fun on the slopes. I'll see you up there.
It is funny the way that people talk about, like, the winter in especially if you go down, like, south, in the southeast, and people talk about the north. I feel as if all my friends from the south are saying, but what about walking to the store in the freezing cold? I'm like, yeah, that's 5 minutes that I do, but it's beautiful if you sit inside. And then I think that if you said about the BS, have you heard the flat tire example about East Coasters versus West Coasters? I'm curious your take on this. It's if if you were going down, if you got a flat tire on the side of the highway, and if an East Coast person, especially Northeast, if they stop over, they'll cuss you out, be like, what do you mean you don't know how to change a tire? You're a fucking idiot. Like, you are such a dumbass. And they'll get out, they'll pull out the tools and they'll help you change it and then say, fuck you, and drive away. And then if a West Coaster, especially Bay Area, pulls you, like, comes up, they're like, I am so sorry that happened to you. That is such a bummer. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Like, have a good one. And then they drive off. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very typical way to kind of like stereotype each side of the coast, just like I have in this entire conversation. Yeah, it is quite accurate in terms of like how people like to express themselves. And you
sound like you have like more thoughts there.
Well, really, what I was thinking about is just it's just how people want to express or protect their own energy. Like, if you think about it, people, like in this example, where we think about on the East Coast, people say like, "Oh, like fuck you," and then they help you out, and then they say "fuck you" again before they leave. Out here, it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry." It's like kind of like I'm gonna protect my own energy right now. I don't have to go out of my way to help someone, to feel like I'm helping someone, but there's like, "Oh, I'm gonna acknowledge that you have a problem right on your hands, but I'm not gonna help you," regardless if they could or couldn't. Mm-hmm. Same thing with someone who's going to help you on the East Coast with a tire or not. So really, it's coming from a place of like, whether they know or don't know doesn't really matter. But yeah, how things can come off certainly changes the way that people perceive things. If someone were to move out here from the East Coast, and know several people have like you, and you come across situations like that or don't, it will vastly change your experience for how you want to live here or not live here. So it's sad in a way that sometimes people will choose to be that way out here. But yeah, I mean, we live in the Bay Area, so it's quite a privileged place. So I wouldn't be surprised that people will see things and choose not to help, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know how. They haven't ran the 13.1 miles between point A and point B.
True.
And so they haven't even begged the question to be like, one, first of all, even aware that they could do something like that, or two, even like learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Period.
So with that, like we're comparing the Northeast to Bay Area, to your point, which is like two very small parts of the United States, but it like, one, we've both spent time on both, so it makes sense. And then two, I feel like the Bay Area does attract a lot of like new Northeasters. So there's a lot of comparison between the two. But did you ever consider going anywhere else?
Yeah, I grew up here and then moved out to the East Coast and I came back. And I think a part of me, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure this out. But I definitely made a decision to come back here because family, and I love it around here. And like, enough East Coast, I want back here. So yeah, in a way, I kind of felt internally, I never really kind of like, this is going to sound aggressive, but like I never like conquered my grounds here in San Francisco. And I don't know if you can kind of think about it in a way that the hometown that you grew up in. I don't know if it was a small town or a big city, but at least for me here, I spent most of my time across the bay. So I didn't spend a lot of it in the city. So I always was looking at the city from across the water. It's like, so much over there. I mean, I'm not 18 or 21 yet, but there's a lot over there. So I didn't necessarily have an expectation for that, but I was just like, I want to live in a big city. To come from like within me, it has to really come from really deep meaning. Like if I found out there was something for me like over the seas, then I would, whether that's career or relationship or whatever that is. So not necessarily an external thing that like pushes me in that direction. It would be more like I feel a calling. I feel a really big purpose driving me this certain way. And that's for me to explore. It's an active thing I'm doing today and going forward. It's not something that just kind of happens. It's not like one day I wake up and I'm like, I should probably just move because screw this.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. It's very, when you know, kind of thing.
I think so, yeah.
What I started to hear is you were like so active and then you came back to SF. Did you get into yoga after moving to SF, or did that start when you were a soccer player in school?
I mean, it's all coming from a place of growth and connection. So when I broke my leg playing soccer from high school into college, the following summer, I was preseason training and whatnot. Um, my mom said to me, like, Lucas, you should go do yoga. It's going to be good for you. I'm like, no, mom, you go do that thing like every morning and like whatever. Like, I'm going on my run. I'm going to lift weights. Like, whatever. And then finally one day, my mom's like, Lucas, you should do yoga because LeBron James does yoga or something like that. Like one of the big basketball players. So I'm like, this was like in our kitchen, so it wasn't like out in public, but I was just like, it was like a cringe moment. I'm like, oh my God, okay, I'll do it just because you've been bothering me this whole time. And you're coming up with like a really ridiculous like explanation for why I should go do yoga.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. I still had to make the decision to go do it. She wasn't forcing me. She was just like, nudging me on. So I think it was like the following week, I signed up for a class at club here or something like that. And then after I was like, oh, well, that was actually pretty cool. So I continued to do it from there on out.
What was cool about it? What like
the practice?
Yeah.
I think about the very first class I took, which I kind of forgot that feeling, but or that moment, but I remember the feeling. So it definitely felt freeing, even though if I wasn't completely open as a person, as a physical, like from a physical standpoint, very locked into like college athlete mode. So it was just kind of like, oh, I'm here to make sure that I can stretch out. And that's how typically people will start. I want to get more flexible. It's like, as a teacher now, I'm like, okay, great. So that's where it started. It really started from a place of healing, which I think it does for a lot of people sometimes. Growth, also then pushing myself. So the more and more I went, I found that there was more and more for me to learn every single time. And I'll still say that today. Every single time I go into the mat, I'm always learning something new. So I kept doing it, loved it, got my first job out in Buffalo, New York in 2017. And ever since then, it was just going to like a yoga class in the gym. Like, like a gym's going to have like random fitness classes, and I'd go take power vinyasa classes there. So then I was like, I've made some friends through like yoga now, and they're off doing their thing in college and stuff. But I'm just like, what would it be like if I went to a real studio, like a studio dedicated to yoga? Oh my God, I feel so weird. I'm like just talking about it. I could just remember myself in that moment. Like, I'm so scared. So like, I just went online to Google. I brought up the first 3 searches that came up in the city in Buffalo. I'm like, okay, power yoga studio here, here, and here. And go to the first one on the list. And don't think about anything else. Like, don't overthink it. Don't think about like whatever. Don't think about how it's 99.9% like females and I'm going to be the only guy there. Which like I thought about, that was like the one thing I was just worried about. So I walk in and like, I'm the only guy there. I'm like, great. Yeah. But it's a ridiculously hard practice. So the first studio I went to was a Baptiste studio.
Oh.
Took my first class and couldn't go back. Couldn't not go back. And I was like, I love this. The thought about it being 99.9% female had no weight on it going forward. It was just the beginning. Yeah. So that's how I got into it.
Wait, sorry, and can you also explain Baptiste? Because, like, to be honest, I don't think, well, one, I know a ton of people don't, and I know I don't.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, I mean, and so just, there's yoga, right?
Right.
You can describe that in so many different ways, and people will argue what it means, but like, yoga is going to have a meaning for someone. And for someone that hasn't done yoga, it might look like someone touching their toes or whatnot. It's a good start. For me, yoga is like an expression of way of being. Yoga is a practice to come back to recreate anew. So that's, that's a part of our practice. We create presence every single time we're on our mats. So when we think about yoga on a spectrum, there are several different types of yoga. And this is, again, putting things into the category so we can understand different practices. There's Hatha, there's Bikram, there's Baptiste as a subset of Vinyasa yoga. So Vinyasa is flow. Vinyasa translates to flow and breath. So Baptiste is the last name of a guy named Baron. Baron Baptiste is the guy who created this whole methodology that we practice today in our studio called Baptiste Yoga. And he actually grew up here in San Francisco. His parents grew up in San Francisco in like the 50s and whatnot. I think his dad's name was like Walt or something. But basically, yeah, he grew up in this era of when yoga was weird. the weird kid thing, the weird movement thing. So he, like, fast forward to now, he's created this whole methodology to make the practice accessible to people who want to get into it, more westernized. So he learned from really great gurus, BKS Iyengar, a whole bunch of other people.
Gotcha.
I don't dive into scripture too much, but it's a part of my learning and education. So I know enough so I can understand how we got here. But I don't bulk myself down to the point where it's like that's what the practice is, because to me, if I don't start gaining ground in where I am now, how do I ever call myself a teacher? How do I ever call myself like I'm exploring my own edges and journey in this world? If I'm always paying attention to what's been done before, then what use was it, like those guys getting us here? So that's my own belief in methodology.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of became a teacher. I didn't think I was ever going to be a teacher at all. It was never my plans. At the studio in Buffalo, I was going to 5-6 times a week, nonstop.
Wow.
And the things that were bringing me back were the community, the people, the teachers. I got along with everyone very well. I loved them all. And I kept going and going and going and going. And then one day this teacher came up to me. She said, Lucas, have you ever thought about going to this training? I'm like, what is this? She's like, you should go. I'm like, what? I'm like, is this a teacher training? Because I don't want to be a teacher. And she's like, don't ask questions, just go. I'm like, God, okay, fine. She said it kind of aggressively. So
yeah. You're like, for a yoga instructor, that's awfully aggressive.
I'm like, gee, fine. So I signed up for this thing. I didn't even read into anything. I didn't go on the website obsessing over what it was. I'm just like, I'm just going to do this, like, whatever. So I ended up going to this thing, and yeah, I did. Was like 160 people in this training. Did 159 of them want to become yoga teachers? Abso-freaking-lutely. Was I the only one that didn't want to? Yeah. I came out of this training on the other side, like, I really enjoy this practice. My reflections on it was like, I want that to continue. That sensation of feeling like there's not just one direction, but there's an openness to how my practice could go. And that looked like teaching. That looked like not just practicing anymore. So my final year of college, I started my own club called Power Yoga RIT. So I taught free classes twice a week to anyone that wanted to come in. And that's how I started teaching. And I don't know if we talked about this, but like toward the end of that first semester, I was booking out in this studio room in our gym, and obviously it's a shared space, so like anyone can book it after. And of course there's a real wellness class that happens after me with a real yoga teacher, and it was quite funny because I was running over time.
No, really.
And so like after the fact, like I could see that, like I walked out and this lady who was clearly the teacher for the next class was very like a little annoyed. And so I was very aware of it. Obviously at that point, like, I'm sorry, this won't happen again. I know we have back-to-back schedules for the next semester as well. So I want this to go well. I'm trying to bring practice to people. And I started to talk about my purpose and all that. Oh, okay. So I'm like, left, whatever. Next week she came back. And I think she came early because she started to watch me teach. And then after the class, she's like, where do you get your training from? And then we ended up being both trained in Baptiste yoga. And the following week after, she's like, she got my number and she said, we actually need some instructors, specifically male instructors at our studio. Would you like to audition with us? I'm like, and know that this is like the path that I took. I didn't think I was ever going to become a teacher.
Right.
So I was like, sure, I guess. So I just kept moving forward. Went to the studio audition. They loved me. I started teaching there. That's how it started for me.
That story's pretty common too. Like, would you agree of people that you talk to of like being almost like adverse to yoga? And maybe I'm projecting because I had a similar experience of being like, yoga seems a little like woo woo for me, and like a little like I don't think I'm into that. And then someone was like, you need to stretch more. You need to go to yoga. And then finding out this is a whole other thing. But do you find that like that when you as a teacher now, I think you touched on this a little bit, but that you're now noticing those people come through your practice?
Oh yeah.
other than me.
No, yeah, absolutely. First of all, yeah, I'll be the first to admit I had similar perspectives growing up. I mean, I always thought I was just stretching around in the room. So like,
Yeah.
I had to open up that perspective. I had to just go do it. And that's someone who's also like very physically engaged in this world. I, I'm never going to turn down that opportunity to do something new.
Yeah.
So if I went and if it was a terrible experience, like first experiences matter so much. Like the teacher, they're welcoming, inclusive. It goes really far. So that all draws into the who person I am now, the instructor that I choose to be. I always do my best to be open with people and make sure they feel at home when they land in their mat in the classroom. Once they make it to the classroom, it is a different story because now I'll bring them through the practice, and sometimes they won't expect for it to be a hot, sweaty practice.
Yeah.
But it's funny. That's kind of a thing that I noticed with other teachers. Other teachers will want to bring the class down a notch. They're going to want to meet it at a beginner level. But like for me, no. I'll go the other direction. I'll sometimes ask if there's new people in the class, and I'll point out, thank you for coming, because this is what we try to do every single time. We try to land in our mats as if we're coming here for the first time. We come here every single time, walking off the mat saying, I learned something new. So good job. You're now leading the class.
Yeah.
So that's how I won't say that literally every time,
Yeah.
but I will lead it from that perspective.
Yeah.
But I'll also be with them in the classroom. So it's like, I won't just say, hey, let's hold high plank for 10 minutes and I'm going to watch you.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's interesting because I actually remember you weren't the first class I took at Baptiste, but you were like one of the first few I took. And one time you said, my friends say, I'll tell my friends, oh, I'm going to practice. And they'll say, like, what do you mean you're going to practice? And you said, like, yoga is a practice. And I remember being like, okay, that makes sense because I'm trash at this. And there's some people who are really good and there's some people who are bad. And you're coming back to get better. And when I thought about practice, I was constantly thinking sports practice for a performance, like for the big game, for the big match or something like that. When yoga, there is the big performance is your life almost. So if you can elaborate a little bit more on what you just said of being like, this is a practice and how you bring that to your students on a continuous basis, knowing that Baptiste, you also have to follow like a certain methodology.
Yeah. I think methodology is great and it gives a structure for how to, do the practice.
Right.
But at the end of the day, and this doesn't get taught to you at studios or in trainings, I think I kind of got that understanding from playing sports so much. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this because it's not easy to explain this to people. And I want to say this in a way that others could understand. That's even a thing for me to try to overthink things. But let's say I'm training for this half marathon next week. And I'm training very differently this year than I have because I'm actually choosing to train. Previously, I would sign up 2 weeks beforehand and I'd just go run it.
Oh, okay. So you're training.
So for the past maybe 3.5 weeks. So just a little bit more.
Okay.
So that being said, I have always wanted to I don't want to say always looked at it a certain way, but I've always experienced it repetitively in a certain way to get to where I am. So if I went to go run this half marathon next week and I was doing it how it was before I would be putting my all in. It would be running it down to fumes and running it as hard as I can. And now it's like, if I can open up my practice just a little bit, my practice of not just running, but breathing, my openness to letting things just be for a moment while I run. Similarly, how we practice in yoga, like you think about Baptiste methodology, what we do in classes, lots of emphasis on breath. What's it like if we breathe when we're in a really deep twist or in chair pose? That's a very similar analogy to what I'm talking about with running. What would happen if I just breathed just a little bit more calmly with my breath as I was running? it's easier said than done.
Right.
But it does beg the question of like, what if? So I think there's that curiosity to explore when you just think about the practice. When we go practice this, why? Why am I going to practice interviewing with you? I don't know. Why? For everyone, that's going to be different.
Yeah, right.
So if everyone had the ability to at least be aware of that as a practice, from yoga to every single thing rest of their lives outside of the mat, I think we'd be in a better place as a world. But it does take the bravery to ask or question where we are, because it does open up some things like, I'm not exactly on the path that I want to be. I'm not the person that I want to be. A lot of story in between me at the start of the race and the finish.
Yeah.
It's a lot of working through things, but the ability to just comes with time. But it does start with, is this a practice, or am I coming here to be in the studio because someone else told me to, or because I think it's going to do something more surface level, which is fun. It can start off surface level. It can start off by being bothered by my mom of saying, hey, do this because LeBron James is doing it. But it starts somewhere. Yeah. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's starting somewhere. I like that you keep using that analogy of the half marathon, and I also like that it's a half marathon and not a full marathon, which is also like insane to even say. A lot of the reason that I started this is I particularly just like love people watching and like strangers, and strangers are just interesting. And even like you and I've known you for a while now, but like I didn't know any of this before we started talking. So you're almost like strangers with a lot of people in your life that like, you don't even think about. So I'm curious about your last meaningful interaction with a stranger. Not me, obviously.
A stranger, like not someone I know, but like a stranger.
A stranger.
Oh man. I mean, I can really do my best to be objective about it and go back in time, but there's one that really sticks out to me. I remember this was probably about 3 years ago, and I was driving across the bridge because I was actually taking a class here or something. I was doing something here, and I was driving across the bridge, Bay Bridge, and being very like tired. I think it was kind of late at night. I had like no gas, so I had to pull off into the very first gas station I could find, which right after the Bay Bridge, I'm kind of landing in some questionable territories at night. Mm-hmm. I think I would have been fine during the day, but anyway, at night, I pull up to the first gas station I can find. Okay, it's kind of a questionable area in terms of all safe. So I pull up. I start filling up my gas, and then I get approached by like strangers on the street. And the first man that pulls up, he's like, "Hey, you have any change that you can spare?" I'm like, "Hey, sorry, like I really don't really have much. Like, we're coming back to this, like helping me on the side of the street thing." And he's like, "Come on, man, I just like need a little bit." I'm like, "Okay, you know what? I might have some in my bag, but like give me a moment." And I'm just kind of like, I just want to get out of here. I just pull up my car and leave. But he's standing there. And then I think I said something along the lines of like, "Hey, look, buddy, I can like go in and buy you a drink or something if that's what you want," and like whatever. And as in the middle of me like searching for my bag and I'm telling him that, he starts to go off on this rant. And I think it was interesting because I thought he might have been under the influence on something, but he started to say things like, "Oh my God, this has had to do something with like me being African American. This is like a racist thing." I'm just like, I stopped what I was doing. I like straight up just like looked at him like, "Whoa, buddy, absolutely not." And then we started to have about a 45-minute conversation about life.
Really?
Yeah. Me and this very evidently looked like to be a homeless man asking for money. And at the end of the conversation, he left very happy without even receiving any money.
Wow. Would you
middle of Oakland.
Just like chit-chatting? Like
chit-chatting.
Wow. Dude, how did you come away from that conversation feeling?
It was in the middle of the conversation, it was I felt conflicted because when he said that, I'm like, that's not where I thought this was going. Mm-hmm. but at the end, it felt very like I don't want to say fulfilled. It felt very complete. Like we had a very complete connection. Like what I just described was kind of like the conflict point. Like evidently he had conflicts about identity and like whatnot and what was happening in the world. So when we were talking about it, it was a very human conversation. It had nothing to do with money at that point.
Yeah.
I felt very complete walking away from that situation because at the end of the day, it was like he was trying to find connection. He was trying to find someone that would see him fully, not someone that would just brush him off. And yeah, it was going to be so easy for me to define him as a homeless man, maybe on drugs, was asking for drug money. And I was just curious enough to keep asking, like, hey man, what do you need this for? Like, you need like food and water, I can go and grab food for you or whatever. So on the middle of me saying that, he cut me off and he said like all these things. And then I was curious enough to just listen to what he had to say and just like, oh shit, man, that's not, like I wasn't making any assumptions here. But yeah, it was a very complete connection.
Well, it's funny because it does like tie back to like a lot of what you were saying earlier. Like you keep saying you were curious enough to ask, but you also stood on your values enough and like were willing to speak up to be like, that's not what I meant. Where I feel like a lot of people would have said something more along the lines of like, whatever. Like, that's not what I meant, but I don't care. Like, here's the cash. Like,
continue to like close off.
Yeah, exactly. Continue to close off. And it goes back to what you're saying about like your childhood and like what you were like as a kid. So it's like, it's cool to like see that like full complete story with that story. But that's a great story. I love that. It's a little
the first off the top of my head, the last time I like spoke to a stranger. I mean, it was definitely been like way closer in the past than that. But that was the first thing that came to my mind. It was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a meaningful one. I did ask for meaningful, so obviously it was. That's all the questions I had. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to?
Well, I'm sure there's stuff we didn't cover, but we could leave that for a part 2 or something like that.
But this was great. Thank you.